Hey guys, welcome to episode number 2 of the Ask Canonicals SEO show. So what we're going to be talking about today is a very basic understanding of SEO, how it works and why we do it. So episode 1 was based on the fact that we got a question asked by a partner of ours. So anytime you guys ask us questions, we're going to make that our top priority. If in this case, this week we didn't get any questions, we'll basically go to beginner 101, frequently asked questions that we can actually find on Google, what people are searching for on Google, and basically use that as how we build content going forward. And then if next week we get a question, then we'll go straight to that. And then the week after that, we'll go back to what people are asking for on the internet anyway. So we want to make sure that we give the priority first to you guys that ask the questions. And then if you guys aren't asking any questions, we'll just go to what other people are asking the internet basically, and based on what Google suggests as the most frequently asked questions around SEO. So the first question, let me get into it. First question is, what is SEO and how it works? Well, actually, it's the simpler questions that sometimes throw me off. So what is SEO? Ultimately, SEO stands for Search Engine Optimization, and it's the practice and application of improving your website's structure and foundation at a level where it makes sense for users and it makes sense for search engines. Now, back in 2008, we had to do a lot of tweaking because websites were created in weird ways, as I mentioned to you in episode number 1 with the flash and hiding text and all the rest of it. So we had to really optimize foundation on a foundation level to make sure content can actually be found by search engines and not just read only by users. Google used to preach it was all about the users, nothing about them. If you did that, you could still land in a bit of trouble because developers could actually produce websites that weren't always visible from a search engine perspective. So when the little search engine, the little crawler comes over the website, it's got to actually pick up, at the time, text. And if it wasn't in text, it didn't really understand anything in images. Now, in saying that, search engines are becoming more and more advanced. So but lucky for Google, the web is moving in one direction in a sense of what is the best standards of building websites. And when you look at most people now, they're using very popular CMS systems like WordPress, Magento, Squarespace, Shopify, and these sort of platforms, not really building up from the ground up. So we're seeing more in the sense that WordPress out of the box takes care of many of these issues that we once had to face more regularly in the early days when I started, in 07, 08. So essentially, SEO is all about optimizing your website to make sure that it makes sense and it's understandable. It's all about, as says it in the word, search engine optimization, so making sure that it's optimized for the search engines. But going forward, it's all been about user experience and how that's grown and developed. So SEO is a term that we still use, but the big term now is really inbound marketing and content marketing, and really like evolving as the industry goes on. Our strategies evolve to what makes sense for the users, knowing that most of the on-page foundation today is quite understood by search engines as they get advanced. So we don't have to be so strict and stringent on basically making sure that elements are done right on websites. And plus, like I mentioned, in the 5 on-page and off-page strategies, I mentioned about crawlability and internal link optimization. Those things still very much apply on a more intermediate to advanced level, but on a basic level, if you're using a system like WordPress, most of the fundamental SEOs are taken care of from a very basic foundation level. So how it works essentially is the search engines, Google, Bing, and there's other ones out there as well, but they send out crawlers and little robots, and they basically go out throughout the entire web crawling web pages. Now, crawling does not necessarily mean indexing, and I'll get to that after, but basically, essentially, how SEO works is the search engines scroll over the web page, and if they like your web page, they'll index it in their system. So when you go to Google and you type in a keyword like red cars, it's obviously going to display all pages found by crawling and deciding what it indexes and how it orders it based on an algorithm. And what that algorithm will decide is basically when you get results being returned back to you after going to Google and typing in red cars, what appears as number one, what appears probably on 50 million or 100th millionth web result, basically depends upon their algorithm. And trying to keep it really basic, guys, that algorithm is quite complicated, and who even knows, essentially, if everyone at Google really even knows what it is altogether, they probably don't. That's how sophisticated it is, and they've got all different departments. So it works on a basic level by the search engine robots going out, crawling, and deciding what it will show on its index and what it won't. And once you make it to the index, then the second step is to appear higher in search engine queries generated by you guys. So why we do SEO? Well, why we do SEO? Well, just think about it for a minute. Why would you want your website to appear number one for a keyword such as car storage Sydney, or wedding ring Sydney, or engagement ring Sydney? Why would you want your website to appear first? Well, ultimately, because the click-through, because basically the amount of clicks you're going to get is usually more depending on where you are on the first page. Now, if we do SEO because for a couple of reasons. One, you want more people coming to your website, obviously, that is qualified, that are looking for what you provide. And secondarily, to obviously bring out your brand more, so even if someone doesn't click on your website initially, they see it in the results. And if you aren't ranking as highly as you could be, at least they get an understanding of your business name. And that's really important when you start dealing with keywords that have 50 or 60 or even 30,000 searches per month. So ultimately, why we do SEO is to grow businesses, ultimately, and to build digital bridges between what a customer wants and what a website's going to provide, and or business is going to provide the user. And users and queries have different context. So you might search, what are the 5 best tips to renovate a home? Google will understand the context of that query and may even shape the results based around more of an article base. But if you type in a keyword like buy LCD TVs, you're probably going to see more e-commerce based businesses where obviously they're going to be selling TVs, right? So what you search changes the context of the results that you see. So it's very important when you do SEO that you are building long keyword phrase content like how-tos and whys and best 5 tips for doing X, and at the same time you're optimizing your specific content for if you're an e-commerce website around sort of the buy now sort of keywords, or shop now, or LCD TVs in Sydney, or whatever the case may be. So you got to so you're optimizing different parts of your website to achieve different outcomes as well. So it's very important. SEO still, of course, SEO won't die. Don't listen to all the don't be a headline reader. SEO won't die. In fact, search will never die. So just take out even if the engines die, in the sense of Google and Bing, how will people still get through all the noise to find the best business for them? It has to be it has to be an algorithmic base, and I believe that the process of how we search may change. The platforms that we search on may change and evolve with obviously AI and machine learning and voice and all the rest of it. How we search on what platforms will definitely evolve. It's evolving now as we speak. But the idea of searching and delivering set of results generally will never change. If you go back to the Yellow Pages days of my dad's business, and he actually had the business ABCO A to AAA BCO because he wanted to rank first in Yellow Pages when you open the book and look for tool makers. Well, it doesn't do that anymore, right? It doesn't matter if your business starts with A or starts with Z. It's all based on an algorithm, based on trust and authority and credibility. So if that will never change, it will always be an algorithm based in how it displays results, because there's just too many businesses today, and how could you possibly rely on alphabetical order? So you've got alphabetical order, which will never come back, to algorithm evolving and changing and adapting, and so the process of searching will change in the sense of how we search, but the fact that you need to be optimized will never die. So don't listen to the hype. And what most people refer to when they do say SEO is dead, what there is a little bit of truth in that, and what they're referring to is the old practices of SEO, like the meta keyword stuffing. People used to put, stuff the meta keyword tag and throw all these different keywords in. People used to do some dodgy stuff, and you have like a web page. There's just all images, which back then, remember, I just mentioned Google can't crawl images, but then right at the bottom, right down the bottom of the site, you can't see. It's got all this text-based keyword stuffing, just, car storage Sydney, car storage car, Sydney storage car, Sydney car storage. And it just keeps repeating. And that used to work. So the search engines obviously have become more and more advanced to that and understand that that's not that applicable anymore. So the fact is that everything is constantly evolving, and it's very important for your business to have professionals on board to make sure that your business evolves and moves in that right direction. What are search engines? Well, search engines. So basically, that's another question that popped up in the frequently asked questions in Google. Search engines can be a wide variety of different things. Most people, when they think of search, they synonymously, can't say that word, think of Google as a synonym for search, and that's just due to their brand power over many years and their authority that they've actually become synonymous with searching. But Bing's a search engine. Facebook has its own algorithm. YouTube has its own. YouTube is actually the second biggest search engine. And most people don't think of YouTube in the same sense as they do when someone says YouTube it. No one really says that, but people say Google it. So search engines basically work based on different search engines will work different ways. So obviously search engines like Google and Bing will go out and index content, and because you're not necessarily sending your website to Google and saying, hey Google, here's my website, doesn't really work like Google comes to your website. So that's where the SEO, search engine optimizers, help you rank higher, as long as they're doing white hat. Whereas search engines like YouTube, well, you're going to YouTube and you're putting your content on YouTube, like this video is going to go on YouTube. So rather than YouTube come to this video is going to YouTube. So therefore, it's still going to be an algorithm, but it's going to be a little bit different because the content's already there. YouTube doesn't usually go out and find other videos and bring it into YouTube. It doesn't do that. Google does, and Bing does. So how they work depends upon that two main criteria. How and which does the search engine come to you, or are you putting content on a platform that requires an algorithm? So YouTube will obviously work a little bit different as opposed to Google. How SEO is done. I don't know why I put this one on the board. Basically, I already spoke about it last week. How SEO is done is basically split into on-page and off-page factors. So Google will come to your website, see a web page about A, and let's say your topic is dogs. So hopefully it will understand on-page factors. So you want to see a URL called dogs. You want to see links in your top navigation saying dogs, and then it browses to a URL called /dogs, not page 176, which I spoke about last week. And you're going to have a H1 that says a big heading, H1 that says, big dog, big and small dogs, for example, and then you're going to have all content underneath. So you're going to have a big heading, and you're going to have content. So think of a newspaper headline. It's got a big heading and it's got text underneath. Well, that's pretty much what the on-page is going to look like. You may have a few little images showing different dogs, and then you might even have, as I mentioned, internal link optimization. You might even go off to more specific pages called, big dogs. So the URL will be dogs/big dogs, or big, right? And then that goes over to that links internally from that generic page, and that helps your internal link optimization, which I spoke about last week. As well as you got the off page. So it's looking at websites. So Google's obviously, as it's crawling other websites, it comes across a big website, a vet-based website that's talking about dogs, and you've got an article on your website talking about something specific to dogs, so big authoritative website called dogs.com or dogscare.com, then links to your website because you put something about dogs that they want to link to. So you may have done a study on the 3 best ways to care for your dog. So then you have another article called 3 best ways to look after your dog. Then on dogscare.com, which we'll say is a big, just think about it as a massive authoritative website, will then link to your page called 3 best ways to look after your dog. And so Google looks at that and goes, wow, this page now is giving a big boost because you have a site that's relative to what you do and it's authoritative, linking to you. You know, the best way I've always explained it is it's basically like you've got your best friend. Hopefully you have a best friend, right? Otherwise this analogy is not going to work for you. But let's say you've got a really, really, really close friend. Now, have you ever noticed that if you go to a party and your really closest friend introduce you to someone, and your best friend clearly really likes that other person, that builds trust because you trust that person already. He's your best friend for a reason, right? So that best friend of yours says, Tom is a really awesome person, become friends with Tom. So that's going to lend more credibility than if I say Tom's a good guy. But who am I? Who am I to you? We don't know each other that well. But if I say to you, Tom's a really, really, really good person, you're going to be like, maybe, but I don't know, right? But if your best friend who you already got established trust, it's credible, it's been proven that it's been reliable and dependable, but all these years says Tom's a really, really good person, you're going to trust your best friend over me who you don't know. Well, search engine algorithms kind of work very, very similar in saying, well, we know dogscare.com is a really, really important site. Your site must be really good because they're obviously linking to you. And don't forget, it's a mathematical algorithm, right? So that's a really big way of determining how SEO is done, is making sure you've got the right pages optimized, as we talked about last week, and then we get authoritative and relevant resources linking off to your content. So that's how SEO is done on a basic level, on a really basic level. There's so much I could talk about. Keyword research, figuring out what people are searching for is really, really important, and creating content that's engaging. And there's so much. Content marketing is huge. So how we basically create web pages to make sure that the way that they're written, you know, using buzzwords and breaks in content, the way in which pages are actually formatted can really decide heavily upon someone reading a 10-minute article or not, and just reading the headline. So you want people staying on your site a long time, reading your content, because it improves a very important metric called time on site, which Google can measure if you have analytics installed. So that's really, really, really important, and that's pretty much how SEO is done. So I'm really flying through because I want to keep it, try to keep it 20 to 30 minutes. So I did have crawling and indexing. So there's a lot of confusion that lastly I want to get on. The difference between crawling a web page and indexing, okay? So the first thing I spoke about last week was the accessibility. Assuming your website is accessible, it comes to your website and it crawls. Now, just because a Google crawls a website doesn't necessarily mean it's going to index it. What does indexing mean? Indexing means Google has crawled a page, it's seen your web page on your website, and has decided that it wants it in its archive. And that archive is also commonly referred to as index. So it wants your page. It wants /dogs. Now, it's crawled /dogs, and now it's decided to index. You know what, let's change colour. Hopefully you can see it. If you can't, I'm going to use purple. And purple is going to represent Google's index. Can you see it? Yeah, maybe not. Doesn't matter. So the purple is Google's index. So I'm going to use a green pen. No, you can't see green. I'm going to use red. I think I can see red, yeah. So Google comes across and sees /dogs. It can understand, oh, look, you got all this content. You got a link from Dogs Care, even though it's gone to your 3 tips. It can see that you've got other really important content coming from authoritative websites. Then it sees this page. It's more likely going to index it. everything, right, that it sees and that you allow it to index. So it crawls these pages, it says assigns, these pages are authoritative enough. I'm going to add them to my index. Okay? So it's got to crawl before it can index. You got to walk before you crawl, but you got to index, you got to crawl before you index. Okay, think of it like that. So, but you can also disallow certain, and I'm not going to get into that, but you can disallow Google to index certain content in Bing from indexing certain pages of your site. So if you have secure pages that you don't want them to see, or you don't want them indexed, or you might have something called Canonicals. And Canonicals is a whole discussion in itself that I didn't have time to bring up last week. It's one of my favorites because it's all got to do, I guess, with crawlability in a nutshell, but I couldn't break it down. Canonicals, and that's if you have /dogs, and then you have a big selection of dogs, and then you might want to select a certain attribute of a dog. Let's say you're selling dogs online, you're selling puppies, and you want to sell I don't know, what would be a good, like maybe, let's just say you don't have a page called brown Labradors, and for this sake, it will just be, you might see them on the website and they might change the attribute to brown, so then it just shows brown. So what sometimes happens, and I don't know if this is the best example, but it's the best I can think of, you might see question mark in the URL, and you'll see brown, you might see, color equal brown. So you'll see like /dogs, you'll see like a little question mark, and it'll be, it's called a query perimeter, and therefore it's the same page that's basically been broken down into just showing you the brown dogs. So it's the same page, it has all the same content, it's got the heading, big and small dogs, and then showing a specific, but now instead of showing you all the dogs, which is the default page setup, it's now you've selected a filter. Let's say you've clicked on an icon, or you clicked on a drop down menu, and it's changed the URL to just brown, but it's the same. It's only appended the query mark. It hasn't changed the entire URL. So what Google then's got to work out is, whoa, I'm seeing basically the same pages, right? The only difference is you've changed the sort of images. So which one do I show to search engines? So what we normally do, we add a canonical on the query perimeter back to /dogs. So we don't redirect it, because if you redirect, 301 redirected, people can't get to the brown dogs. But you want to show it to users that makes sense, but you don't want Google to index it. And so it's a legitimate page. Google will crawl that page. You want Google to crawl it, but not index it. And that's where people get confused with Canonicals. Because Canonicals still get followed, the links on the page are still followed. So it'll still see the page, but it won't throw it in the index. So you won't see query mark brown dogs, because it's still the same page as dogs. And so that's another way of making sure that it gets crawled, but it doesn't get indexed. And that's a legitimate way that Google will crawl a page, but it won't index it. And that makes sense, because otherwise it creates duplicate content issues. Episode 3, duplicate content. Please remind me, duplicate content. Got to talk about that. So hopefully, I'm going to leave it at that, but crawling does not equal indexing. It's just usually just the first part of the process. And hopefully, guys, this has been a really good basic 101. I find that some of the different, it actually throws me off when people ask really, really, really simple questions. I'm thinking, what do you do for a living? And I can easily say, it's search engine optimization. It's a process of improving your website's visibility on the search engines. But then, in front of camera, you kind of go, what's the best way to describe it? And then the brain goes in overdrive, rather than if someone asked you on the side of the street. So it's been a bit of a journey for me to be able to talk on camera and to get my thoughts out clearly and concise and understand straight. So I'm describing it to you as if it's only just you that's asking me. So guys, if you've got a question on the crawling versus indexing, what is SEO, why we do it, what are search engines, and how SEO is done and understood, please, guys, leave a comment in the comment section below, and hopefully you can maybe ask me a question that I can do for episode number 3. Thanks a lot, guys. I really enjoyed it, and I hope you did too.